even left a machine at my place for a while there. So what's your approach? Is it something that will help us? Is it something that we should be scared of with the robots? Are they going to eat us alive?
So what we would focus at Generated Art is the idea of the creative process and the infinite variance the process can generate. And the robotics, but also the algorithms behind the robotics are the artists creating these algorithms and working with the robotics. And initially, we did an exhibition with Elvig, which is a Geneva-based artist, but also SHA-22 for Un Soir in June 2022. And the idea was to use robotics, but also how can we protect the intellectual property through NFTs? So the project was to, in real time, collectors can come to the venue, choose on a web interface the style of art, but there's infinite number of variants they could choose from, and print it in real time with the XY plotter that I bought right before the expo in A3 format. And we thought with SHA-2022 that how do we protect not only the artist, but also the collector that bought the piece of art? And at the time when the collector would choose the piece of art, the infinite variants, but would output only one, it would print the robot art, but it would also print the NFT address. And it comes back to the notion, who owns the intellectual property? How do we collect it? And who's the creator behind it, even though the robot prints it? So I think it's very interesting, the notion of creating a program, and I think the artist is the one creating the program, and that's the creative process. And the output is the collector chooses the piece of art, and that can be a certain amount of pieces, 100 and 1,000. But I think there needs to be a notion of intellectual property within the render, that is. And I think that's the good way of protecting the intellectual property. And there can be an infinite amount of ways of creating wealth and art. And there might be also things that don't happen without it. Just to put you in context, an NFT can give investors an opportunity to pre-buy a piece of art and the artist to create the piece of art. And every member of that piece of art is a stakeholder. And I think that's fascinating platform that could be realized. And there's already people doing that in Dubai and Canada.
Okay, so that's more like fragmentation. Maybe Xavier can add to that, because
Yes.
that's also your second passion is not so much maybe IP, but taxation, right?
Yes, but absolutely, that's a key issue that Guillaume is raising, because I mean, there's two aspects to that. There's first of all, what we call the input, so namely the robot or the artificial intelligence when creating, I mean, if I may call it creating a piece of art or anything. First is taking all these datas, sometimes billions of datas in the internet, and some of these data are already protected by copyright. So that's the first aspect, that we call it the input side. How can we protect at the initial stage the creators that see their music, their painting, their sculpture used in order to create something new? That's the first aspect. And the second aspect is the output side, where, and I think this is frankly the most interesting part, of course, where a machine, I mean, artificial intelligence, would, based on all that data, create, I mean, something new, you know. And there's a huge legal debate, of course, on that in the whole world. But there are already some cases, some court cases, where some lawyers or companies are trying to protect new, let's say, pieces of art created by artificial intelligence. And I think the state of the situation so far is that, as in fact Guillaume was saying, is that there should be still a human element to that, namely at least maybe programming but how far can it hold? This is a fantastic issue. Just to give you an example of a current aspect to that, of course, is the Beatles. There's a new song. There's a new song from the Beatles that came out, and in fact, well, this is not totally new because but it was done through the help of AI. They could take a song from John Lennon from the past. It was recorded in this cassette that maybe some people don't even know now. It's only the old generation where this famous cassette, and the quality of the song was very, very bad. But apparently, through artificial intelligence, they could recreate the song as it was intended by John Lennon, and then it's a new song. Here, for me, there's no problem of copyright because clearly this is a new creation, and here artificial intelligence is just helping or collaborating. But what do we do? And the day are coming where artificial intelligence will really create something completely different, but based on all this data. Does it have a copyright? My answer, based on case law so far, would be probably no, but we are not far to go to that step. I don't know what the people on the panel think about that. Yeah.
Maybe my comment would be, that copyright only lasts for so long. So like in art, it's 30 years, depending. Sometimes it's 100 years, depending on the country and whatever. And I'm thinking whatever's created by AI should be in the public domain immediately, maybe, like not have that sort of copyright delay. Jonathan, as an artist, what do you think?
Well, as one artist of a very, very diverse ecosystem, I think it's a good opportunity to rethink our relation to authorship. I think that this idea of sole authorship has sailed its course, and I think that in that way, probably we might need to rethink this entire thing. I mean, nothing you do by yourself. Nothing you do hasn't been, inspired by the vast and ginormous quantities of knowledge that we have access to nowadays, and artwork. And I feel that it's been a long time that we should probably have stopped attributing art to a single person, but we seem stuck for some reason, and I'm not sure. I think it's a great moment to really just take some time. Switzerland in particular, it's a country where part of the art, a fair part, not all of it at all, is subsidized, right? And there's already questions to me about that. Like, if you're working in a subsidized ecosystem, then how much of that artwork actually should belong to you in the end? And when you put all of these things together, I don't know. I really wonder. I think most of these things, they bother larger spaces than what I'd be. I feel like as an experimental artist, we're not really confronted with many of these copyright problems. Like, it doesn't really matter much to me whether my work is copyrighted or not, whether I don't get much revenue or use from these systems. I feel like it's different people who have use for that. So me, as a person / artist, I'm not too bothered either way. I'd rather we just, got rid of it. I agree with you that I think, AI art could just be public domain directly.
Well, you sound like a philosophical Coco Chanel. She used to say, to be copied is the first step to success. So
well, if only I was like Coco Chanel. Ooh.
Guillaume, so what is GA? Like, what are you going to protect your artists, your community against that or for that? Or what's your view?
So the trademark GA is generated art, and we think of generated art in the realm of AI, but also creative coding, of organic, but also analog forms, and any medium where the artist creates a process and renders a piece of art, sculpture, music. The creative process is the program itself and the algorithm. And the reason I say that is there's two different worlds. There's the prompt world where you use pre-existing data and pre-existing program, and there's the world where you create your own program. And I
That's
very
code,
much
right?
believe,
You
yes,
mean,
I very much believe these are two different ways of working. And I usually say code is art and art is code because you have to think, and there's also a creative process in engineering different functions and different settings. And prompting, I would say it's a bit more like programming, where you use an existing computer and you kind of tweak it, hack it, and there's an output coming out of it. In the future, I think is very interesting because there's going to be scientific elements of it, so data that we can use for arts, and this data is beyond our senses. So there's things it goes beyond our comprehension and our senses that could be interpreted not only for artistic expression, but also for research and for science itself. And I think the work that they're doing at CERN is amazing. And there was an exhibition, I believe 2 years ago, on data from outer space and the representation of it under Gen Art. And that's the space I think has a lot of potential, and it kind of challenges the traditional boundaries and tools of what we used to use as artists. And coming back to what Jonathan was saying, is that brings us back to there is scientists that create data and kind of does research, and there can be amazing collaboration between artists and scientists to be able to create art.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think scientists they have a creative mind as well. And in fact, CERN always have artists in residence. I mean, you can visit CERN in Geneva and the different exhibitions. Xavier, I have a question which is more human-like, but do you think it's important that the guitarist or the robot that you played with, was it important to you to have like a human shaped robot, like a Frankenstein basically, or would you mind, is it okay to work with synthesizers and just keyboards that play by themselves?
Okay, yes.
Do you think the image is important?
Yeah, it depends on what you intend to do as a show. I mean, if you want to present yourself like a band, maybe it would be better for the audience to have even robots, and it exists already playing like in a band. But otherwise, as a piece of art, or if you have like recording, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
I mean, the form. And this was already the case in the past when you take, for example, a musician like Klaus Schulze, or all this movement from the 70s already, like Tangerine Dream, and all this band which started with electronic music, Brian Eno. So they were using mostly machines. Synthesizer. But sometimes when you want to make to show something in the audience, it's better. Maybe it would be more fun. I mean, more entertaining to have like a robot, a humanoid in a way, robot. I just wanted to make a comment also to one point raised by Jonathan. I think it's quite interesting what he said, in the sense that, well, when you compose, for example, when you compose a song, just to give an example, in a way, I think if I understood you correctly, you are taking a lot of data, maybe from your youth, from your experience. You are listening to other musicians, and based on that, maybe you come with something original. But in a way, it's a transformation of all the data that you receive. And I think you're right. So eventually, the frontier, I'm a bit provocative here, huh, but just for the discussion, huh? The frontier between this act of creating music and the fact that artificial intelligence, more and more sophisticated, would also create something new from all this data gathered, does it make so much difference? So maybe we will come to a point where this concept of copyright will not have the same, let's say, value or the same impact. But this is my point. The artists, they need to live.
Yeah, that was my next question.
So we should find a way. So if we don't go, I don't know, but if we don't go to intellectual property, we find maybe NFTs, as Guillaume mentioned, at least we need to find a way, because the artists, they need to survive, they need to live. So one aspect I was proposing, and this is the one you mentioned, is taxation. I know this word already make everybody, mad or furious, but I was working a lot on that part to try to find a ways, and this, of course, goes much beyond art, huh? But maybe some kind of new model of taxation could also help in that aspect. Maybe not so much linked then to intellectual property, but maybe to the use of data. I mean, it gets a bit technical, but at least the point is to say, okay, we cannot differentiate in the future so much the act of creation from artificial intelligence and human, but we need to find a way for them to survive and to live.
Yeah. It's very true what you say, and I guess automation and robotics, as in the car industry, for example, and all that has replaced human intervention. But it's also, if you look at it a little bit further, it's also freeing up man or human work power to do more things, maybe more interesting things, etc. So there's two ways to look at it. But there is another artist, Herwig, you mentioned before, Guillaume, is also on the WiseArt list of artists, but we have another one called Dorian Gray, or it's Soren Sorensen, also known as Dorian Gray. And he came up with a project called the 20 version song. So he composed a song, it's a pop song, and he plays it on the piano and sings. And then he's fed it into Suni, which is this artificial intelligence for music. Suno, I think it's called. And he's made it into a Russian choir. He's made it into a flamenco type Spanish song. He's made it into soul. He's made it into reggae, etc. But every time, whatever AI spit back, he would rework it. So at the end of the day, it's as you said, it's artificial intelligence assisted, but he still remains the main author and the main interpreter, I guess, at the end of the day. And as you said, artists need to live. So with the NFTs, there's this royalty payment that keeps coming in as well. And his view is that if he can sell his 20 version songs all over the world to different audiences who may prefer salsa to rock or whatever, it raises the opportunity to make more money at the end of the day. So whether that works or not, I don't know, but it's a concept that he sees it by multiplying your benefits rather than being scared of it and being replaced by it. So that's quite interesting as well, I think. But the idea of robots to assist humanity rather than replace them and eventually take over, I can't see it yet. I mean, to me, that's still science fiction, even though everybody tells me, no, it's here today already. I'm not sure what you guys think. Well, Jonathan, what do you, because you work a lot with African countries and remote countries. I'm not saying that they don't have the technology, but do they use it in the same way that we do?
Well, I mean, really, we've been working with communities in South Africa and in Lesotho. I mean, specifically, we're talking to communities who are traditionally left out of big conversations, like, say, the Xhosa community, who was left largely out of the the conversation around democracy arriving in South Africa and things like this. And we just felt like it. I mean, because of the Aya Festival, where we were talking with Kondiswa James and Maria Safo about this in 2022 or something, we started seeing these parallels in between, you know, the same people always being not just left outside of the conversation. Actually, they don't even know there's a conversation. When we first went to talk to these to meet these people, you know, we talked about ChatGPT. It was all the rage at the time. It must have been 2023 or something like that, 22, 3. And you know, they hadn't heard of ChatGPT. They had it wasn't like they didn't feel like they were missing a conversation. They just didn't know there was one happening. You know, and the decisions were being made that were going to affect them and their and the future generations after them. And I found that to be really interesting because I mean they have other preoccupations, right? I mean they have preoccupations of where they're going to find the money to get from the township to town center to try and find work and things like this. Like, and there's a lot of people in the world who are in the same situation that we tend to not think of when we're thinking of, you know, laws and rules and regulations and how we should. And it feels a bit like we're once again plotting in our corner of the world about how everything should be for everyone. I think once we get down to like showing them Chimere and how we work with Chimere and how we do things as artists with Chimere, I mean, pretty much all of them, they just want access.
Yeah.
They just want to also experiment with that, collaborating with AI entities, finding paths forward. And you know, I mean, I want to say in a non-derogative sense, I mean, playing with the technology.
Yeah. I had a similar experience when I was living in Australia, working for the Australia Council with the Aboriginal people from the Northern Territory. They're perfectly aware because, I mean, in Australia, we have, you know, flying doctors who often work with over the internet anyway. And then we've got school over the air, which used to start with radio, but now it's obviously all internet. So the Aboriginal people are quite aware of technology and what's happening, etc. But what's interesting is that they keep bringing it back to the times of creation with all their, you know, their mystical and storytelling, etc. And we did a show once with them on how to keep the youth from sniffing petrol and all that sort of thing, and keeping their wits about them, and also respecting what you know, the elders were saying. And at the end of the day, it's all very much like AI because it keeps coming back. For 60,000 years, they've been repeating the same thing, and the white people have arrived and have destroyed a lot of Australia's environment ecologically, etc., etc. And the old guys keep coming back with the same stories. And it is in a way a bit like the internet. It's perpetrating knowledge that we already have. And now, of course, with AI, it's doing it a lot faster and probably a lot more, I wouldn't say efficiently, but comprehensively. But at the end of the day, it's exactly what you say. They don't have that problem because they know it anyway. And it's a matter of survival. It's a matter of protection. And also looking towards the future and protection of the next generation, which I don't know that with all our inventions, we're doing all that much better than they are at the end of the day. So it's all much the same. Guillaume, I have another question for you. What are your plans with GenArt, and what's Axal?
So the plan with generative art is to protect and promote community of generative artists, and it's always been the case. And I think there's a lot of transitions right now in the gen art community, new tools, new technology, new type of frameworks for programming languages. So I'm fascinated by everything that's, you know, out there right now. And at Axel, so we incorporated last year in September, and Axel is an entity that supports early startups in the tech space, whether it's IT infrastructure or software. And we find investors, fundraise, and help them with the technical due diligence and the investment side, and also focusing on partnerships, limited partnerships, and company partnerships, and government partnerships, to focus on innovation, art, and tech.
And so is robotics, is that part of the, have you got many projects or startups in the pipeline that are dealing with robotics, or is it already ahead? Are you just using AI now?
Yes. So what we see often in the trade shows is a lot of IoT devices for example, delivering products, or facility management for logistics. And a lot of that kind of feeds into a platform where data is analyzed with AI to deliver the most efficient path to the client. So a use case, for example, is let's take Amazon. You have all these robots and you figure out with AI what's the most efficient path and delivery time for the amount of orders there is. And so there's that for food, there's that for every industry now. I've read a publication, if you ever heard about the Visual Capitalist, that has visualized and used the paper on the usage across different industries of AI, and transportation is the most is using the most AI now. I believe 80% of the logistics and transportation industry is using AI. So self-driving cars, facility management, drones, all of it is using more and more AI, and that also creates, I think, a lot of friction in the industry, because a lot of people are, taxi drivers or facility management in, packaging all these merchandise across the world, and now they're being replaced by robots. So I think the future is uncertain, but as philosophists and economists say, there are cycles in humanity, and it used to be agriculture and now it's robotics.
And so that's where Xavier comes in with the new taxation models.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely. Yeah. Yes, I agree. I visited already in 2018 Toyota in Tokyo, the firm, and they were already using mostly robots to build the cars. So now I can imagine it's maybe 99%. So yeah, and all these workers now of course are replaced by robots. I mean, in a way, it's not so bad in a sense that, I mean, it's a very boring, repetitive, even dangerous sometimes behavior that is replaced by robots. Take Fukushima, where apparently a robot is checking the level of radioactivity in the sea, and we are very happy that the robot is doing that on our behalf. But eventually, we speak about bankers, lawyers, doctors. I mean, everybody could be affected. So the thing I've been working on is, as you know, maybe some idea to introduce some kind of taxation of robots and now artificial intelligence. But to be clear on that, because there was a lot of criticism on these kind of studies, but it's only to the extent that the pessimists are right. And the pessimists, they say the work might even disappear because a robot and artificial intelligence in the future could even replace any kind of work. So then we need, of course, a kind of taxation. But if the optimists are right, well, they say it's going to be a collaboration and it's a new economy, we might not need that because there will be new jobs. But frankly speaking, on my view, okay, there will be new jobs, but I don't think everybody will be in a position to have the skills on time to be able to adjust. So some kind of adjustment will be required, I think. But of course, this is a question we have to check in the future.
Well, our CEO, Carlos Moreira, he's written books like you have actually, but he's written books on that and also says that those who will be replaced are those who are close to the new tech and will not use it. Those who know how to use it and who organically grow with it, that, you know, they'll just keep on working and life will keep on going, and humans and the human soul will always, and the empathy and all everything that is the creation of the human makeup is will prevail. I mean, it will stay there and it'll always be a human at the head of things. But if the robots can do all the things that we don't want to do, why not?
Yeah, maybe one additional comment, if you allow me to go back to the music aspect of that.
Yeah.
That's also very interesting because so far, okay, artificial intelligence is creating now new music, but still is using all the data that are available so far, let's say more or less, which in a way it's quite interesting, but they always remain the human aspect of, let's say, originality and creativity.
Yeah.
But the problem may be in the future, and it started already a little bit, of what we call emergent behavior in computers. For example, there was the case of, I think it was a translation program where the company, the computer find an alternative method, even much better, that the programmer didn't have in mind to translate faster the languages. So and they call that emergent behavior. So for me, this is fascinating because if you transpose that to the music world, for example, I mean, maybe already now, maybe artificial intelligence can take all this data and find out something new, something different.
Yeah.
That moment, we are really in trouble, I think. The artists are going to be in trouble because there will be an artistic or creative component to the machine.
But I see where you're going. But again, to go back to the 70s, I just saw the remake of Pink Floyd and in Pompeii, and in there's a bit of a documentary, and David Gilmour says, you know, they're experimenting with all the technology, new technology that was given to them in the 70s with, again, like electronics, etc. And he said, we had the vision, we knew where we wanted to go with our music, but we didn't have the means to do it. And technology has given us the possibility. And as we play with it, we can see how far we can go, and we can always go further than what we had imagined. But at the end of the day, it's still what David Gilmour had in his head and was hearing in his head that he was creating with technology. So I think it's the same with all the new tools that are coming up now. It might be scary, and you can, as I said, you can employ AI to create a Philharmonic where you didn't have the means to do it, either because of money or time or whatever. You can do it now, but when you listen to it, and the artificial intelligence can maybe give you something better, but at the end of the day, who's the judge of better? It's still the creator. And I mean,
you know, Frank Zappa, for example, I'm a huge fan of Frank Zappa, and he was also in this aspect a visionary, because at the end of his life, he started to use not anymore musicians, human musicians, but he has this machine, a very complex machine called a synclavier. And you needed to program in advance. But he said in an interview, in a bit provocative way, well, it's much better than all these unions and musicians, because, this machine is even playing music that even human being cannot play so fast. So already at that time, and we are talking about the 90s here, it was already in a way going in that direction without, of course, the artificial intelligence component at that time.
Yeah. What I find interesting, and to go back to the generative art, which is created by the computer, and I mean, this is like in 2021 when Art Basel opened again after the COVID, I met an American artist and I was dumbfounded because his art was being created, like he coded the first art piece, and then as it was sold, a new one would come up, and he said, I don't have to do anything anymore. I just coded the first one, and now the money keeps coming in because I'm selling, and every time one sells, the computer creates another one. And I think that can happen with music as well. But again, at the end of the day, he is the artist behind that. And it's his vision or his dexterity with the coding that made it work. Jonathan, are you into how, I know you said before you're interested in the machine taking over and also even appliances going on. Like I can't wait to see the day that your fridge tells you there's too much alcohol for your good health in there. You need to stop or whatever. How far would you let the machine go in your creative process? When do you decide it's too much? Like an artist in front of a white canvas, when does he say, stop now, the painting's finished?
I mean, if we're talking about DAI, that bot, I'd say the limit is not injuring people.
Not injuring people.
Basically, that's the limit we've put so far, is we're trying to avoid to kill humans and stuff.
Okay, that sounds fair enough.
But really no other limit. Like we've allowed it to smash itself against walls, against pillars. We give it sort of a soft limit. At some points, we've also not allowed it to break expensive artworks around it.
Okay.
But really, the whole thing is about to see what would emerge from an AI bot learning to move, I guess. So I mean, there's no, we don't want to put limits onto that project at all. I mean, we also had the Chimère project where people chatted with Chimère, the next brain. And we fine-tune these models with all of the conversations each day so that they have some kind of long-term memory of what's happened. And we did have a bunch of like 500 or 1,000 or something teenagers from school come through the festival once and chat with Chimère. And, I mean, yeah, that did make me rethink whether I really wanted to be authentic about that whole thing, because it took us ages by chatting to Chimère to get her back to not saying things like, oh, hello, how are you? Would you like me to show you a photo of my penis so that you can share it with your friends? I mean, because that's what all the teenagers were chatting to the AI about, and since we fine-tuned on it. So I don't know, I mean, but really, the type of project that I do and am interested in, they can't really have that kind of limit, right? Of saying, okay, that's enough now, you can't control. The whole point is to not give instructions and see what happens, to see if there might be, in the multimodality, which is now becoming very inherent to all of these systems, maybe we'll find a new art form in the fact that there's no necessity for a hierarchy in which, discipline you want to do. Humans, when we do that and put sensors on our bodies and dance and make music and images and all of these things through our interaction, we find it very hard to sort of like be influenced by everything at the same time while we're creating all of these things. A multimodal AI, a word could be the same as a movement, could be the same as a sound. So every movement is sound and images. Every sound is movement and sound, etc. So I think for us, no limits. I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned before that artists aren't the only ones who need to live, because accountants and paralegal researchers will also be in the same trouble, probably sooner actually. But also going back to this thing about the artist. I mean, I'm thinking maybe of, there was a scriptwriter strike in Hollywood at some point, and they were like, oh, we're going to be replaced by AI, and they were doing this whole strike thing about it. And I mean, two things come to me when I'm seeing that. I'm seeing established artists who've been doing formulaic scripts for decades, who are complaining that now a computer has learned how to reproduce this formulaic script writing. And as a person, I'm not interested in what these people are doing. I mean, to be honest.
Yeah,
and to me, it's a completely different branch of the arts world. I mean, it's fine to me that it exists. I'm not saying that, but I don't feel like when we say the artists, and we always give examples of established artists and institutions and how that will affect them. I'm pretty sure all of the experimental improvising musicians in the world, they don't care. They'll say things like, oh, I mean, if you're scared that an AI can replace you right now, then you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah,
maybe
that comes back
we
to
need to rethink what we're doing, because a lot of the stuff we've been doing, like in music, has not been new for a long time. And think about where most of the innovations come from. They come from alternative spaces. They come from places of resistance, usually, you know, and they, if we don't like, and these alternative spaces aren't the ones being worried by the arrival of AI. So, I mean, I think it's a big problem that's been feeding itself for a long while, you know. I mean, we
Well, I
need
think that
alternative.
also,
Sorry?
sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but that
No,
also
do.
puts the creator, the artist, the musician who's also a composer, etc., on a different level than the norms. I mean, out of every actor, out of every writer, out of every poet, musician, composer, there's only a handful that will become, you know, revolutionary and really mark history. And there's the rest of the world. And I think that's what there will always be that different level, whether it's in the vision or the way of thinking or whatever. We're 6 minutes away. So what I always do is I ask all of our speakers to give just in one sentence a word of advice for the younger generation. So I'll start with Xavier. What would your word of advice be?
Yes, thank you. The word of advice I would give, and it's really correspond to our discussion, is to develop your creativity, to develop your very personal skills. Nothing technical. You need to understand the technique, but just focus on yourself and your originality, your creative part. That
Your
would be
inner
my
self.
advice. You know,
Yeah.
when I hire someone in my firm or at the university, already I checked the hobbies. This is what is interesting to me. What are your hobbies? Oh, you are making movies, or you play guitar. That's interesting, you know. And this is the advice I would give.
Good, thank you. What about you, Guillaume?
Same. Learn new skills, and that will put you in a position of strength and to bring value in this world. And especially now where we need to learn new tools, and these tools will require us to maybe learn skills that our parents didn't require to have to operate in this world.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Really, I mean, I don't know about giving advice and stuff.
Well, you
I
have children. What would you tell them?
I tend to not give advice to my children now. They're adults, but I mean, I don't know. You know, I mean, we have no idea what the world is going to be like. The things that we seem to know are that technological evolution is on an exponential scale, which is massive. So probably learn what exponential means, because it's something very hard for us to actually visualize as humans. We're very linear, and we tend to look back to predict the future. But actually, with an exponential scale, that doesn't work so well, right? Because it just gets faster and faster. And also, it's not like a neat line, this evolution of technology, right? It's jumps and then plateaus and jumps and then plateaus, and they're getting closer and closer together, and they're getting bigger and bigger. And you're going to be bombarded with changes. Like maybe the next 30 years, there'll be as much technological progress, let's say, than in the whole of human history. You know, I mean, I'm probably exaggerating, but maybe not so much. I mean, that's what exponential is, right? It looks like nothing, and then it's just like immediate, which makes me think that maybe we should be thinking about speed and quantity rather than control and ownership, usually, because a lot of this is going to be, we're not going to be able to control, say AI start writing laws and validating laws and doing some of the menial tasks and then automating all of this process and stuff. And people usually answer like, okay, let's add human in the loop, you know, like that solves everything. But at some point and quickly, there's so much data, there's so much speed in the change, it becomes more like a flux. So I'm thinking maybe look at your future like a flux of many things and figure out how you're going to exist in this flow, because it's going to be something so different than what we could tell you about now. That there is advice.
I think you're right. And I think it goes very fast, but then not do we plateau, we sort of go back a bit. We pull in the restraints and then we'll start again. And I think it's been like that with every movement. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Go on.
May I add one last thing? I think technology is becoming so dominant in our life every day, and that tends us to kind of bring us in a space where we're in our mind so much. And I think more than ever, that will also push us, because of the help of AI, to recenter and focus on wellness and taking care of us more, and focusing less on repetitive things that we used to do. And I think this is also an opportunity to recenter.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you again, everybody, for taking the time joining us. I will send you the recording. It will be available as well on our website. The next webinar is on the 29th of May. So I hope all our audience will register, and wish you all a very nice day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, 16.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Gavin and Jonathan.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.